Sweet surrender as I love, serve, and remember.
The one power. So basically, I had to be more linear with this one only because I was so quiet yesterday sitting with Jack. It's hard to go back into the verbal world. So the three questions I want you to leave here today. Well, my concern was I wasn't going to have enough, and I think I overdid it. So the three questions I want you I'm inviting you to consider and reflect on this week is, one, what are your empowering stories? To be clear on what your empowering stories are. It's really important to know what those are. Two, what messages, signs, messages that have you received from the external world, especially the natural world? Have you ever received a message, or maybe several times felt like you've received messages from the natural world? And are those messages still relevant to your journey today? Or have you already fulfilled whatever it was guiding you to do, that's already done? Or have you received a message from the natural world that is still alive and active that you are working through today? Because when we start to get these messages, they're timeless. They're not just for a specific time. And then the third question is, have you received any messages inwardly and from the invisible realm that are still relevant to you today, that you're still sort of working on, exploring, deepening in, again, because these can last for a lot of years. So what are your messages? What are the messages that you've received externally, and what are messages you've received internally about your life's journey? And what does this have to do with one power, one presence? So power is the ability to produce an effect, to act or produce an effect. So power is it impacts us. And what's interesting as Cher was reading about the presence of the divine everywhere, all of this world impacts us. We're this incredible, huge energy field, and everything is impacting. And so every day, I invited you on the email, if you read it, just to look at the things that impact us. Because when we really pay attention, everything's impacting us, and we get to choose where we put our attention. But the weather can impact us, the economy can impact us, our work life can impact us, relationships can impact us, our health can impact us. All day long, every day, because this world is a world of fluid energy, we are impacted, we feel it. We're not a wall that there's out there and there's in here, and I'm not touched by the world. Every one of us is impacted by what's unfolding. And we get to participate because that divine power is within us. And so we are playing with this energy. We're playing, in essence, with this world of effect to create stories that are healing and transformative through our participation. We imagine and we create, and new things happen because of that. So there's nothing that's solid in this world. So that's the whole point of the spiritual, I think a lot of it in the spiritual progressive world and the New Thought world is to say we are empowered, the power and the presence is within us, and we can imagine and create and start getting mastery over things like our financial life, our relationships, our health. It's not absolute, but we can have extraordinary impact. One of my favorite things, as many of you know, is I listen to the Moth Story Hours. I like This American Life too, but that's a little longer. I'm not in the car long enough to get those stories. But there's short snippets all the time, and for me, the reason why I love the stories, it's how people interact with their life. It's a creative act. Telling your story is a creative act. So these stories are so often hilarious. They're transformative. Sometimes they're just pure heartbreaking. It ends in some way in heartbreaks, but the person, by telling the story, is already bringing healing by telling the story. So we're always empowered to participate in our story, and not even bringing spirit into it. It's just how people show up to participate in their own life, and it's so motivating and energizing and heart-opening. The very last story I heard was yesterday while I was driving, and it was of a Vietnamese woman, and her family was born and started to be raised in Vietnam, but it was during the Vietnam War, and her dad fought in the Vietnam War, but he just couldn't live there when it was overtaken by the communists. And the thing that he couldn't stand, what he told his daughter was, it's one thing to have the external challenges, he said, but then they were taking us to schools and telling us how to think, and I wasn't going to let someone take over my thoughts or take over my children's thoughts. So I was willing to risk my family to get on a boat and sail for a country where our thoughts weren't going to be mandated what we should think. So he takes his children, he risks everyone's lives, as so many people have, and they ended up in Australia, and sadly, they were fine. They survived, and he was beaten many times, threatened for his life, and he would come home from work just crying. His kids don't know this, but he was exhausted. In Vietnam, his job had been going around every day to count the manslaughter and count all the bodies, and there's just so much trauma in his head, and now he's gone for freedom, and now he's getting beaten and threatened and bullied, working 3 jobs just to pay, because they didn't have any education, they had no money, they had nothing, so he's doing everything he can to keep his family alive. And what came from that was this rage, and so from that rage he started really beating on his wife and his kids from that rage. So the daughter who's telling the story left home at 17 and did a lot of work on herself, and I can't remember, 20 years, that seems too long, but after quite some time had passed, she decided, I can't let this continue on, what happened in Vietnam, what happened in Australia, I've got to do some healing work. So she goes back and starts to try to reintegrate with her family, and she tries, and it's difficult, but she keeps showing up, and she gets called to write a book. And she's writing the book, and she said, I wasn't going to show my dad until it was all done, so it sort of had a nice ending. But she said, I was only on chapter 7. It was a chapter where I was really talking about the abuse that I received from my dad. And he, all of a sudden, she said, out of the blue, said, I want to read your book. And she said, no, it's not done yet. And she said, I want to read your book. And she said, I just couldn't say no to him. So she gave him the book, and she didn't hear from him for 2 months. And she said, okay, I have to face this, because I have to. Because I can't finish. She couldn't write anymore because it was just unfinished. So she faces him, and she said, well, what do you think of the book? And he would just avoid the question. Well, I didn't like that recipe, or the recipe. And she's like, so she kept asking him. And she asked him a second time, a third time, and this, as she's living, Dad, what do you think of the book? And he said, you 3 kids, you're lotus flowers. You grew up in poop, basically, in mud, in darkness, and I'm that darkness, but you all became flowers, and I'm so proud of you. And the healing begins. These are the stories that human beings do when we work on telling our stories and being honest about them and continuing. Life is not easy. But there's a power of good that's always working, and when we participate in it, good things start to happen. Maybe not in the ways that we expect, but when we give ourselves to that story, we empower ourselves and empower other people to find blessings in ways that we never expected. What are your empowering stories? What are your empowering stories? It's really, really important. That is the power of God working through us, is through what you're telling yourself about your empowering stories. Are you listening to messages that you're receiving? So the power of spirit is in this everyday life, but it's also in this energy world. And so when you're having dreams, like often our dreams are just processing stuff that happens in this world. Blah, 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 blah. But sometimes we notice in our dreams it seems very symbolic, and it feels very intentionally symbolic. And we can see that externally as well. You see an animal, and it doesn't feel like I'm just seeing an animal. It feels intentional. There's a message that feels like it's being told. Carl Jung is the one who came up with the word archetype, because what he discovered is that, because the world is becoming more and more global, so we have access to all these different cultures, and a lot of these symbols are showing up in different cultures at different times, and yet sort of giving the same messages. So he started becoming very interested about these archetype symbols that seem to transcend just a particular culture and a typical, a singular culture or a singular time and space. They seem to cross boundaries throughout culture. And there's a power there to discover. And what I'm asking you, because I know from classes that so many of you have experienced these messages primarily from nature or stars, or there's a moment that something really hits you. So I'm just giving an example, but what's important is the message you're receiving or have received is when I had my aneurysm. It was basically a bubble that was in my head since I was a kid, and what happened is it started slowly bleeding. So it had been going on for a week or two. I was having these dreams, and then 2 days before I realized I have to go to the hospital, I didn't know that I was going to have to go to the hospital, but I walked outside. We live in an apartment, and there's a balcony right by the door, and I opened up the door, and right there on the closest part of the balcony to the door, this far away, was this huge turkey vulture just staring at me. And I was like, oh dear, and I turned around and went back in the car. And I looked it up. I looked up in the symbols, the archetypes, what does a turkey vulture stand for? And there was a lot of words about rejuvenation, resurrection, death and new life. And I'm like, wonder what that's going to mean. But it felt my point though is it was very volitional, it was very intentional, and I heard it. And I know you've all had these experiences, so that's why I'm just reminding you now to remember these experiences, and remember that it's not just only one condition, it's not necessarily about just one experience, but it's a message that you may want to continue to return to and say, is there anything else left undone from this message? When the aneurysm happened, I wasn't afraid because I had listened to the messages. And then I still have to say, what does that mean now? What does that mean, rejuvenation, resurrection? Like now that I've had some time, because one of the reasons why I'm slow on things is sometimes I need time, distance, to start looking at it from a different perspective. Oh, let me revisit that. So I'm inviting you in the same way, because there is a power and it's volitional. The volition isn't always from us. That first part, when we're empowering our story, that's our volition. But then we start discovering there's a volition beyond what we're choosing personally, but it is very active in our life, and the way we know it's active is by listening and paying attention. So even if you don't have one particularly that's showing up, just pay attention in your life. Are there messages that you're getting? And sometimes we get them from other people. People talk actually also a lot. A book falls in my lap and I read something, or someone says something and it's a message. Pay attention. The universe is volitional. Yes, and we're empowered to create and to imagine and to become masters, and we're also listening and paying attention to the messages from the universe. And that's the power of presence. We start I should speak to myself. I've over the years have started most of my prayers with the power and the presence. And I was thinking, why do I always add power? Why don't I just say presence? The presence impacts us. It's in of itself, it's powerful. There's a guy who goes around and takes pictures of photographs of people. He's a beautiful photographer, and he'll stop people on the street. Hey, can you just stop? Can I take pictures of you? And he takes these beautiful pictures. They just sort of pose wherever they are, and he puts them up on his site, and they're beautiful, and he just seems to know how to capture the essence of people. The latest video I saw was he goes up to this gentleman and he says, oh, wait, can I take a picture of you? And the guy turns around and he goes, wait, are you Axel from 3 years ago? I took your picture 3 years ago. And so they start talking, and he takes pictures of Axel, and Axel invites him into this beautiful cabin, and I don't know where it looks like, it's in Norway or somewhere. He spoke English. I don't think it's Norway. I don't know why I said that. But and this man says, when you caught me that day, I was in the darkest period. I'm a musician, and nothing was working, and I just decided to give it completely up. I was completely lost. I was in so much darkness. And he said, your presence. And the guy said, yeah, those pictures are beautiful. He goes, no, yeah, the pictures were beautiful, but it was your presence. You were so present with me that it changed me inside, and suddenly this light started to show. The way Joel Goldsmith talks about the power of presence is he says it's no power in the way that we understand power. It's not acting upon, it just is. And when we connect with that isness, when all that stuff starts to fall away, we're still moving forward, we're still acting, but now we're acting with a divine presence that just is, and it's the most powerful thing in our life. And so the way to connect with that often is to let go of things. That's why surrender is such a powerful, transformative practice, because it's letting go, because when we're letting go, we're not going into an abyss of nothingness. We're actually falling into pure presence, which is an extraordinary place to fall into. And I wanted to share this story. I've shared it before, but I think I like sharing stories when they resonate with the topic. And one time when I was working in the psychiatric hospital, there was a woman who came in. She was put on suicide watch and put in a safe room. And eventually she moved into a regular room, but she wouldn't get out of bed. She wouldn't open the curtains. She wouldn't go in any groups. She was right across from the nursing station because they were concerned about her. And they said, will you go sit with her? And so I sat with her, but I knew there was nothing to say. I said, I get it. What she told me was, I've been to all the therapists. I've been here before. I've done all the groups. I've done the therapy. I've done all the medication. Nothing works. I didn't have any answers for her. So I just sat there, and I just said, yeah, I've been there myself. I know a lot of truth principles. I've done therapy for a lot of years. I know all this stuff, but when it really hits these core things, I can't do anything. And so I said, I don't know if this means anything. I just surrendered to God, and I don't know what I kept saying, because what happened is as I was talking, I started being way out here, and it was just all light, and I saw my mouth going, but I have no idea. It was just talking. But everything became this swirling energy. So the chair, the bed, her, me, there was nothing solid in that room. It was just swirling energy. And then there was some awareness at one point that I was complete. And I just got up and walked out of the room to the nursing station. And very quickly, within 10 minutes, she was out. The curtains were up. She was dressed and with makeup on. And she said, where's my next therapy group? Instant healing. I did nothing. And not only did I not do anything, I didn't even recognize at the time how cool that was. Because I was still in that space. It seemed utterly naturally. When we're in spirit, when we're in that place, that feels more real than a lot of the other things that we're experiencing. It's like, oh. So I didn't have oh or ah. I just like, oh, this is normal. And it wasn't until weeks later, it dawned on me, oh my gosh, that was really cool. Because I'd gone back and she had been gone. She had left by then, so I don't know what happened. But I just knew it was all done. I didn't feel a need at the time to follow up because I knew it was done. Not because I did anything, because Spirit just so powerfully stepped in on that field. And so I did absolutely nothing other than agree with her. It is really hard. And there's a God in the midst of that. That's the only thing I brought and I've just discovered there's a God in the midst of that. That's it. It's amazing how many stories that Joel Goldsmith has of his healing, where he's like, I don't know, but God's in the midst of it. That's all I know. That's all he does. God's in the midst of it, just surrenders to that, and then healings start happening. This presence is power. This power is presence. It's the most important and powerful force in our lives. But sadly, the only way I can get there, and I think the way most of us get there, is to let go of all the stuff in between. And so I kept trying to repeat that when I was meeting with other people, and I couldn't activate it again. And I'm like, I'm surrendered, I hear you, I feel you. And because what I was trying to do was make something happen. I'm like, oh, I'm doing this, and never had that dramatic experience. We can't make it happen, but we can let go. And the reason why I'm asking you what is the messages that you've heard internally is because if it's from Spirit, remember Spirit is eternal. It's not just about one time or thing in your existence. It's all the time. So, and so, when I talk about, I had this vision from, about becoming a house of prayer. That was in 2018. The aneurysm, that's 2019. It's all these years later, and I'm just suddenly going, those are still alive in me. I didn't have to hold on to it. I didn't have to make anything happen. The only thing that's happened between then and now is I've had to let go of a lot of things. And it was only in the letting go that I could start seeing and feeling what was being revealed that I couldn't see and feel then because I was blocking it, because I had a lot of attachments that I didn't even know I was attached. If you told me I was attached, I'm like, I'm not attached. So it's really hard to be human sometimes because we do have our attachments. And you'll hear most people who are on the spiritual path, it's a path of letting go because you're not letting go into an abyss, you're letting go into the infinite presence as your life. And it is beautiful. Michelle, you are so beautiful. It is beautiful. Every one of us on this planet is beautiful. And the more we let go, and I shouldn't even limit it to this planet, in all dimensions, the more we let go, the beauty of who in every one of us is gets revealed more and more over time and space. What are the messages that you've heard, and you might have heard it yesterday, you might have heard it today, but you might have heard it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Do you have any of those messages inwardly that you're saying, if I really step fully into what this message gave me, or messages, whatever it is for you, is it still alive? It's still something I need to make space and room for in my life? Is there something I have been unwilling to really listen to because I haven't wanted to? Because it's uncomfortable, because it is uncomfortable to let go of things. Very uncomfortable, but when we let go, we start to hear that, we get to see things new. There's always something beautiful on the other side. There's only one power and one presence. It is always good. It is always beautiful. It is always not just for your highest good, but it's for everyone who knows you, who's part of your life. It's for their highest good. It's for the planet's highest good. It's for the cosmos' highest good. The more you become you, it's for everyone's highest good. That doesn't mean there's a resonance that maybe it, just like we have our different journeys, we say that every week. So it's not like, you're doing this, so I have to do it too. That's why we really say, listen to yourself. Listen to your message. That's your message, and I support you, and it's for your highest good. And by you, what it does is it gives me permission to follow my message. If you're following your message, I have to follow my message. And the more we follow our messages, we start to find a harmony, a harmonization. Maybe different notes, different instruments, but we find a harmony and a unity. I love the idea of oneness and harmony because we're all playing different notes, different songs, and yet there shows up in the great, beautiful quilt masterpiece of this cosmos how it all beautifully works together. This is the one power, the one presence that is infinitely good as you, as us, as the planet, and as the cosmos. What is the message that you are still working with, inwardly, outwardly, and what is your empowering stories? Let's pray. So we just come together just to surrender, to let go. Before we begin the words, we just let go of what came before. We hear it, we feel it, And then we're willing to let it go. Yes, and we let this moment be new. The power and the presence of pure spirit is always powerful and present. We don't need to hold on to the old. We don't need to attach to the future. We're just fully allowing this presence to be exactly what it needs to be in this moment. This presence is love. This is a presence that doesn't know anything unlike love. It doesn't know how not to be love. It only knows how to love some more, and to love yet again, and to love. And when we see and know and feel our stories from this place of love, when we listen to these messages inwardly and outwardly of love, we discover that love has been everywhere all of the time. It's always been there. And the clouds, the shades come off our eyes, and we see with the eyes of the divine. We feel with the heart of the divine. We accept everything that's unfolded. We stop labeling good and bad, right and wrong, and we just include all of it in this oceanic love that accepts every part of our journey, every single part of our journey, in unconditional love. Our own, each other's, this country, this planet, and anything that we are feeling and being moved to act, to take action, to have an impact, is birthed, embraced, and enfolded in pure, unlimited, unconditional love. Whatever we are called to move, to act, to speak, to do, it all happens in this unlimited, unconditional love. Messages of love, stories of love, including the heartbreaks, including the pain. Behind all of it, love. For this love, I give great and abundant thanks. I trust this love with our whole heart, body, mind, and soul, and I release this prayer, this presence of pure being, knowing that even as we release it, this presence is already done. And so it is. Amen.
I walk in God in all I do. I walk in God in all that I say.